With that, I want to turn the microphone over to some of my colleagues. I'll let them introduce themselves as we focus on English language arts.
Thank you, Chad. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mercy Chang, Supervisor of Language Arts, kindergarten through 8th grade.
And I'm Kane Alice, English Supervisor at the high school.
So, as it relates to the standards and the changes that you may have already noticed, some of the major differences between the New Jersey standards and the new Common Core standards, I'll just sum up in 3 points. One, students are reading much more nonfiction.
You may have already noticed that. We used to have a strong focus on fiction, a lot of novel reading, and now we try to really balance that about 50-50%. Two, when students talk about books, which we've always done, that's not new, but now we have a greater expectation that their responses will be grounded in evidence from the text. So teachers might say things like, well, what in the text makes you say that? What in the text makes you think that? So that we're always going back to the piece of writing that they're reading. And three, when they're writing, we also expect that they'll be able to support their thinking with evidence from the text. So instead of persuasive writing like we used to do on NJ Ask or in our curriculum, now we're asking kids to really support their arguments, be able to talk to both sides and find pieces from the text that gives you the reasons why you're saying what you're saying. There's also a focus on academic vocabulary, specifically Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 words. But mainly those are the major changes from the old standards to the new. The Parcc is expecting students, obviously they're still going to be reading passages, but now they're going to be reading what we consider to be a little more complex passages, often science or social studies content related, and very much on grade level, which is, we understand, difficult for some students who are reading below grade level. The Parcc also expects students to defend all of their ideas with evidence from the text, whether it be a multiple choice question or a written response. They're going to have to support their thinking by finding evidence right inside the text. And in our classrooms, we've been working on the following skills, which we hope will help students succeed on the ELA Parcc. We're helping students gain a comfort level with reading passages in science and social studies content areas, in the appropriate grades, analyze primary source documents, construct written arguments using evidence from multiple texts. There's a lot of what we call paired texts, so two texts on the same topic, written by two different authors from two different perspectives. Finding evidence to support their arguments. We're helping them understand and compare author's point of view. And lastly, how an author's point of view might influence the way that a text is written. These all sound like very sophisticated things. We have very sophisticated readers and writers in our classrooms. And I will introduce my colleagues, some math supervisors, who will talk about the shifts in math standards.
Good evening. I'm going to try to use this. My name is Janine Lanfear. I am Supervisor of Math and Science tonight, representing math for middle school. I have my colleagues in the other grade levels with me, and you'll be hearing from those math supervisors later on. I would like to talk to you a little bit about the changes involved in the new math standards. The first thing I would like to share with you is that the Thomas Fordham Institute is an independent think tank. And as we talk about the changes that have gone on when we have gone from our New Jersey standards to the new Common Core standards, is this think tank analyzed all the standards and came up with the following summative grades. Our New Jersey standards in math, they gave a grade of C. Our new Common Core standards, they gave a grade of A-. They looked at issues such as focus, coherence, and rigor when they graded the standards. So our new standards give us more depth and breadth in order to be able to look at students and their mathematical practice. So focus is an important concept in the new standards, and what that means to us is some of the content has been shifted around in grade levels. The old New Jersey standards were sort of like a checklist of all the things that teachers needed to cover in that year. By providing focus, the new standards have said, what is the most important set of concepts for students to master at any particular grade level? Let's give teachers and students more time to focus on that in the classroom and ensure that there is mastery, not just coverage. In that focus, then the teachers and students have time to engage in what's called the mathematical practice standards. That is also new. The New Jersey standards simply listed the content that had to be delivered at any particular grade level. The practice standards, and we'll see those in detail in a couple slides, the practice standards allow us to talk about what are the habits of mind that we expect students to be developing. And just like a lawyer or a doctor will practice over time, our students will practice at becoming mathematicians. And so they are an overarching set of the standards that we will work with students on over time. Coherence is an important element because as students have focus, there is coherence of the ideas developed over time, and it allows students to see that math is a discipline that makes sense. I start out by doing this, and then it gets a little bit harder, and I can use the thinking I've already learned on this topic to help me understand the next topic. So it doesn't seem like random checklists of things that are just kind of thrown in. This is chapter 13, and it's going to be something completely different from chapter 12. So it helps students develop that understanding of the discipline of mathematics. Coherence is also important in connecting the practice and the content. So those two pieces work together. So coherence means that if we have students truly mastering the depth of the content, they will demonstrate the practices that we are looking for, such as being able to explain their thinking instead of coming up with an answer and not really knowing why the algorithm or the process tells them to do this and then that. So it really helps develop students as thinkers. And then rigor. In the past, across the different standards that Mr. Marcus referenced, some of the standards focused more on that procedure. Can students crunch the numbers and come up with the correct answer? Other sets of standards focused more on understanding. These back and forth between the different standards were often called the math wars, and that occurred over a long period of time where things would shift one way to another. I think it's logical for us all to know that students need to be able to get the correct answer, but they also need to understand why they're doing what they're doing and to be explaining their thinking. And so the standards say they must be able to be fluent in their skills, they must understand the content, and then on top of it, the idea of application gets added. Students need to be able to transfer what they've learned to real-life problems. And that's really everything that we're looking for our students as learners, because they will go into real life, and we want them to be able to apply what they've learned. When we talk about the fluencies, this chart summarizes for you the key fluencies that pertain to that focus that I discussed. So as you can see over the grade levels, the fluencies build. And with that extra time based on focus, students are able to master the particular fluencies that carefully build across the grade levels in the progression. By making sure that students are fluent, we know that they will have the ability to continue to go into more rigorous material because they don't spend all of their effort in just getting the mechanical part of the skill down. They're able to then do that more automatically so that they can solve those rigorous problems. And so I mentioned earlier the practice standards, and I'd like to share with you both the way the practice standard is stated in the official documents, as well as the I can statements that are more student-friendly. these are how teachers are really talking to the students on a daily basis about what they need to be able to do. And as you can see, these are really habits of the mind. They're important ways that students engage with the content. So the important idea is the practice and the content, they need to go together. And so the teachers work very carefully to develop these practices over time. Unlike the content standards, which are by grade level or by course level, the practice standards are constant. So as students develop, we look for grade-appropriate ways for students to be able to express these. And there are 8 of them, so this next screen is going to show you the next 4. Again, this is really everything we want for our children. We want them to be able to use math in real life, to be able to solve problems and be successful in college and career.